Hi, hello everybody. So you want to clear the Monolith's Fall on Eclipse difficulty, but you don't really know where to start. Or you do know where to start, but you're having issues and would like some extra guidance. So that's why I'm here to make this guide video to help you clean up your runs by utilizing the best builds, strategies that you can, even as a free-to-play player, and I'll be giving you the best options as well as alternatives that may be a little bit more accessible to you. So to start out, I will be going encounter by encounter, and I will have mechanics examples through the footage that me and my team have for our successful clears on day one. Now, something to note about Eclipse, a lot of you may be wondering, why bother clearing Eclipse when I'm not going to get the emblem? Well, you still are able to get another 300 Lumia leaves, which is almost 2 poles, and you can also use it for other resources. You get a cosmetic engram, some decal packs, a whole bunch of ascension cells, an exotic shader for the mythic raid weapons, and you get an exotic selector engram. So you'll be able to get your hands on any one of the raid weapons that you would either like a duplicate of or that you may be missing. And all of these weapons are top tier. So getting this alone will definitely be worth going through the difficulty of all 3 of these encounters. So to start out, obviously, we will be talking about the team comps that you will be bringing in, specifically starting out with the team comps in the first encounter. So on the Eclipse difficulty of the raid, we do obviously know the types of enemies that we're going to be facing, and we can see it right here that you'll be facing Blast Shinkas and Impact Shinkas, as well as Solar Shields and Void Shields. And obviously, we'd be able to see them for the next 2 encounters as well. So to start out, the 2 biggest things that we're obviously going to want to achieve are elemental coverage and Shinka coverage, as well as having characters that are strong enough to take out all the tough enemies in this raid. Now, because the light level restrictions have been lifted, the raid will now be significantly easier to clear enemies with. However, there are still restrictions on your characters, which do keep it a very free-to-play friendly environment. Now, for instance, the first thing is that all perk levels and all mods are disabled for your weapons, so the only thing that matters is your gear level, which only the level 80 matters, and your enhancement level 10, both of which are very achievable. Your mythic weapon rolls, the first catalyst of your exotic, and no further catalysts or upgrades are applied, and the base level of your artifacts at perk level 1. No attributes will be taken into account, and you will have access to the full levels of your relic, so having it decently invested in relic for the characters that you may be bringing will definitely benefit you. Because the power level restrictions have been lifted, getting your power higher will definitely benefit you, so that is something to look out for. So maybe you shouldn't go for full dump artifacts. However, if you really need to, you can just put on whatever, even so long as it doesn't take your power down too much, and so long as you are at the very least hitting the recommended power of 55k. So with that all out of the way, going through the characters that you would want to bring in the first encounter, the best team for first encounter is obviously going to be the teams that all of the top teams were using for their speedruns, and it's going to be 2 Gwins or Yolders, and that is because they are impact units who are also have access to a exotic heavy weapon that is able to use its special abilities to break Blast Shinkas. And the Estelas were just simply the best at clearing all of the trash mobs and mages that you would be fighting. Now, all of those except for Yolter are fully premium units, so you may not have as much access to them as you may have for standard banner units, but because of the amount of pulls that we have in the game currently, I know a lot of you will have access to some of these units, so if you are able to make a team, then obviously those units would be great to bring. However, when it comes to Gwyn and Yolder, the exotic choices for the heavy weapons are very important. For Gwyn, you're going to want to bring the Octant Rite Dispenser for the first 2 encounters. The third encounter, you could swap back to Concerto and Eternal Retribution if you have good rolls of them and you have them built, but Octant Rite will still be good. Shishingura is going to be your best mythic option. Currently, the Kokoretsi seems to have some bugged perks and is not working quite as well as it really should, and the Chushingura is going to be your best option. The perk roll that I recommend on it is Fraternity plus either Black Body or Glutton. Both of those are going to be good stacking perks for the encounters. And obviously for the Octant Rite Dispenser, you're going to want to get its first catalyst. And as for Yolder, the weapons you're going to want to bring are the DEL5 Kulfi with Fraternity Syncopation and the Partridge Sky with its catalyst activated, of course. When it comes to Estella, the best options for her are going to be if you're using Furies 3, Scorched Earth as the Mythic LMG. However, A great option for Estella and something that will definitely help you a lot is the Gallows LMG. So if you're able to obtain this during the weeks prior in the easier versions of the raid, Gallows will be an amazing option if you're bringing Estella. And that is because it is also able to deal with Blast Shinkas, and it is also a void weapon, so it will help you deal with the plentiful void shields that are in every single encounter of this raid. Now, to demonstrate, I can show off every single weapon except for Gallows, helping break the Blast Shinkas, and you can see with the alt fire of the Octanite Dispenser, you will charge it up for a second, and then it will instantly break all of them. And for Gwyn, you'll gain a whole lot of Void Souls, which will then allow you to do a Void Spin immediately after. When it comes to Yolder, you're going to be using the heavy attack of Partridge Sky, and if you position yourself well, you can hit a lot of them, but you may have to break a couple afterwards, and then the Shinka will be stunned. Additionally, something that Yolder has over Gwyn is the fact that Yolder can also break rapid fire Shinkas at a pretty good pace. Obviously, you will be able to break the impact Shinkas with their weapons as well, both of them being quite adept. And of course, if you had Gallows and Estella, you would be able to break the Blast Shinkas as well, and that is important for the first 2 encounters. Obviously, I know that a lot of you probably do not have or are missing certain mythic units, so I'm here to tell you alternatives to help you break those Shinka shields and other units that you obviously can use. Wolf is going to be a decent option for the first 2 encounters. He will be very much more limited in these first 2 encounters, but he is one of the best units at breaking Blast Shinkas, and you will be able to leverage his super grenades to deal with Add Clear and also Major Clear. However, he does not have access to any void weapons, so you will either have to rely on your teammates or rely on using the super grenades to break down the void shields, which can be tough even with the higher light power. Moving on from that, you will obviously have access to Finala, and Finala will kind of just be a worse version of Yolder for this, but you will be able to still use her, and a lot of you will have been given the option to get her for free from the event. And additionally, another character to mention is going to be Xuan Wei, who obviously will be able to deal with Impact Shinkas and Blast Shinkas because he can equip the Octanite Dispenser if you have it. However, his Fusion Rifle is actually not terrible at breaking rapid fire Shinkas. It's definitely not the best, but if you have no other options like Ningfei, Yolder, or others, it is usable. Now, one character that is worth mentioning for the first 2 encounters is actually going to be Ikora. And that's because Ikora is actually a lot better than some people may think, and she will be able to deal with the Shinkas very easily with her light grenade launcher, and she will be able to group adds like with using her abilities and deal some pretty good damage herself, so long as you have some good stuff on her. When it comes to her particular weapons, obviously the Present Fleet is going to be her only option, and you're going to want Polyploidy and Fraternity. That's my recommended role. But if you're breaking Arc Shields with it, Sympathetic Detonation can also be a good option. The Two-Tailed Fox is going to be the best exotic for her, as it is her only exotic. So if you have that, and you have an Ikora that is at any level of like middling investment, definitely looking a lot better than the Ikora that I have right now, you may want to consider her for the first couple of encounters. Now, for the second encounter, there is one unit that I haven't mentioned yet that you can use and would be very, very good and actually optimal is Ningfei. Specifically Ningfei with the Mahamyuri, which is going to be a similar situation to the Octanite Dispenser and the Gallows. So if you don't have them, you can make use of other units. However, if you do have the Mahamyuri, Ningfei is going to be the best unit for second encounter, and you would probably want to bring 2 of them. The best team for second encounter would be 2 Gwyns or Yolders, 2 Estellas, 2 Ningfeis, and you would essentially just split 1 of each for both teams on both sides. And for the final encounter, the best team would be a Tantu, an Umeko, a Gwyn or Yolder, and 3 Estellas. However, that is, again, a very, very premium team. You can swap out the Gwyns or Yolders for any unit who would be adept at breaking impact shields, and the Estellas can just be swapped out for characters who have really good add clear and also really good DPS. When it comes to Tantu and Umeko, they're going to be using largely the exact same weapons. Total Lockdown is going to be the best scout rifle, and the Mago Ichi is probably going to be the best sniper rifle that you all have access to. The god roll for the Mago Ichi is Statue's Heart and Pranayama. The god roll for Total Lockdown is Fraternity and Allocation Vector. Now, if you do have a God Roll Sidereal Year, which would be Fraternity and Searing Mark, that would also work too. And the same goes for an Izanagi's Burden if you have it. And Borealis is also still usable, but you will want to make use of its exotic perk, Ionic Return, and store those extra power shots for the boss damage phase. Otherwise, it will just not be competitive at all with the mythic options. And Numeko will be using the exact same weapons as Tantu will as well. Now, 2 other characters to mention if you just do not have any of the units that I've listed before. You can use Atal to break piercing. You can use Atal in the final encounter to break piercing shields, and Atal will actually do pretty well. There was a team that cleared on the light capped difficulty, the leaderboard difficulty, with a full team of 6 Atals on the final encounter, so she is still usable. But something to note is that, unlike Tantu and Umeko, she will not be providing any extra damage to her allies. Caber is also worth mentioning in the first 2 encounters, and that is because Caber has the exact same weapon options as Estella, and that means Caber will have access to Gallows, which will give Caber all the same advantages that Estella had with Gallows herself, and Caber will be a lot safer than Estella because he will have access to being able to blind all of the enemies, and he does have his weapon mastery, which will help with AoE as well. He's definitely not a terrible option at all, especially if you have him built. So if any of you have a Caber that you have some investment in on your inventory, then you can consider using him for the first couple of encounters. Now, I believe that covers just about every single unit that you can bring, and you will notice that I didn't really leave any units out. That's because every single unit can be used, even if they aren't optimal, so long as you are able to get the clear. You don't have to do it fast, you just have to survive. And staying alive is often going to be a lot more important than doing it fast, so long as you are still able to clear it within the set wipe time limits in the raid. Obviously, knowing what characters to bring in and what weapons to use on them is only half the battle. The other half does come down to knowing the mechanics of the raid. So starting out with the first encounter, and I'm just going to be playing this in the background, you are going to be divided into 2 sides on the bottom and 2 sides on the top. Each side is going to have a plate, and in order to activate the plate, you will have to take out first the key bearer enemies that spawn, and they will spawn shortly after the Shinka spawn, and you will want to take down all the enemies quickly as they will stack up very fast and disrupt your runs. So you can break or defeat the Shinkas before the key bearers even spawn, and once the key bearers are defeated, both servers will spawn on either plate on the bottom side. And once both servitors have spawned, you will be able to defeat them, and once both servitors are defeated, you can start stepping on the plates. You are going to want to divide, you are going to want to set each team to be divided into 3 portions of your players. Be Team 1 on both sides, which will consist of 1 player on each side, who will pick up the key from the key bearer and convene in the center. Then, Team 2 and Team 3, which will be the other 2 sets of players who will be remaining on the bottom side, will then step on the plates. Now, this is very crucial information. You can only stay on the plate for a very limited amount of time. I can showcase it very shortly. That stepping on the plate, if I can show it right here, so stepping on the plate will obviously, if both of them are activated at the same time, will start activating the drawbridge and allow your teammates to cross. Now, you can see up here that you'll start getting charged up, and with that you can only get up to a maximum of 10, and if you have 10 and you're still on the plate, you will be instantly killed shortly after. So what you should be doing is you should be coordinating with the other team who is also going to be helping make the bridge, and you will be alternating jumping on and jumping off. And what you're going to want to do is when the timer reaches around 5 at the very least, you can count the entire time, but at the very least start counting when it reaches 5. Okay, so you go 5, 6, 7, and when it hits 7, you're going to want to call switch. And when the next person gets up on, you can then jump off before your charge up reaches 10. Now, this is going to be something that you're going to have to coordinate very, very well. Any amount of time being off the plates will cause the drawbridge to then start going down. If you do not have a team on the plates at any given moment, you'll be losing progress in the encounter. You do have a lot of time to clear it, but you obviously do not want to waste any. Now, for the Team 1 and every team that is going up the bridge, you will be convening in the center with your keys active, and one of you will be picking up the fuse. Now, holding the fuse will also give you charged up, so you're only going to want to pick up the fuse as soon as the bridge starts moving up, and you can even wait a couple seconds to start moving up a little bit before jumping on, because you will be able to run and catch up to the very edge of the bridge in order to gain as few stacks of charged up as possible. Now, the same exact deal with the plates. If you reach 10 stacks of charged up, you will instantly be killed. So you'll have to coordinate with your other member of your team to pick up the battery after you drop it somewhere around 9, and when you reach like 9, you would just call out, "I'm dropping it," and your teammate will then have to pick it up. If the battery is on the ground for too long, the battery will detonate and wipe the entire team, causing you to reset the encounter. So it is very, very important that you always keep somebody holding this battery. And you will also be interacting with this battery mechanic for the second encounter as well, so do keep that in mind. Now, after reaching the top, the person holding the battery will then deposit it into the center, which will open the doors and allow both of your teammates to go in and pick up a Scorch Cannon. This is why you need to set it up 2 teammates instead of the 1 which you might have only had to do with the normal mode, and that's because there are 2 fuses that you need to break with the Scorch Cannon, meaning that both players with keys need to go up. Additionally, it would be rather impossible to go up and bring the battery and deposit it all by yourself. So each of you will break one of the fuses on the door, and that will move you on to the next phase of the encounter. Now, keeping enemies cleared will be very, very important. So at any given moment, when you have any amount of downtime whatsoever, you will want to be clearing enemies. Now, at the start of this second phase, servers will spawn on the top side, and you will be able to defeat them instantly so long as you have enough damage. Additionally, on the bottom side, they will be going through waves of enemies, very much like the first wave of enemies that you had to fight, including Shinkas and Key Bearers. So the bottom side will have to work in order to deal with them in a timely manner. Now, the top side, because their servers spawn much sooner, will actually be able to start moving up the plates a little bit before the bottom side is ready. However, it will obviously be best to wait until they have both their servers cleared in order to start making the bridge. And just like how Team 2 and Team 3 were moving the bridge up on the bottom side, Team 1 and Team 3 will be coordinating with each other in order to build the bridge across both sides. So you should start with Team 1 on the top side, jumping on the plates, and then calling out their times for the switch, and then Team 3 would hop onto their plates and keep building the bridge so that Team 2 can bring up the battery and break the fuses on the door with the Scorch Cannons. And the third and final phase will be a lot more similar to the first phase, where you'll have 2 people up top who will build the bridge for the people on bottom. And then once you break the final fuse, you will be able to finish off the encounter by defeating all of the enemies in the center area. Now, something to note is that defensive-oriented units will be very beneficial in this encounter, especially for the people who are on the plates, which, frankly, will be everybody. So if you do have enough clearing capabilities with your defensive units, this will be an excellent encounter to use them in. And when you're in the final clearing phase on the top side, you will be dealing with a large amount of majors, and the important enemies you need to defeat are the Blast Shinkas and 2 Heavy Shanks that will spawn with Void Shields that have a lot of health. This is the final arena for the encounter, so there's no reason to save any heavy ammo or supers. Spend it all. Be generous with your carnage. Now, that is about all for the first encounter. The second encounter is going to be the most difficult one, by far. And that has to do with the amount of mechanics and coordination that you need to have with your teammates. I imagine this encounter will be the main one that people get stuck on. Obviously, for this second encounter, you're going to split your teams onto 2 sides. There's the blue side and the red side, and we just chose those names because those are the kind of colors that the sides have. I know it looks a little bit more yellow and orange, but we just call it red because red is the opposite of blue. So, starting out this encounter, you will be met with a screen, and that screen will show you 2 symbols, okay, in a sequence. The first symbol will be the first symbol that you have to activate in the sequence. So in this case, in the footage I showed, the first symbol was circle, and then it would show the next symbol, which is clover or 4, depending on your callouts. And it will always be one outer symbol and one inner symbol. And I have all of these symbols listed here. And this is every single symbol that's in the game. So, starting out, you have the inner symbols. And there are two types of callouts for this. There's numbers, and then there's objects, okay? Me and my team used objects, but so for those callouts, it would be eyeball, bug, Mickey, and clover. However, you could also do 1, 2, 3, and 4 for the amount of circles that you see in these symbols. And then obviously you have square, triangle, circle, and diamond for the outer symbols. So this is very important to note. For these TVs, there will only ever be one inner symbol and one outer symbol. There will be no repeat types, and there will also be no repeat symbols whatsoever. And what you're going to have to do is you're going to want to enter them in the exact sequence that they appear on the screen. So if you were to put in clover first, the encounter would wipe even though it is a correct symbol. You must go circle first and then clover. Otherwise, again, you will fail the encounter and wipe. Additionally, something else to mention is that if you take too long in between the sequence, you will also wipe. So if you input circle first and wait too long, then your screen will turn blue and wipe because you didn't enter clover fast enough. And this is just for this very first room. Immediately after putting in this symbol, you will then be given a fuse, and you will take the fuse down into the main room and put them in. Again, the fuse will give you stacks of shock that'll cause you to instantly die if you hold too many. So you're going to want to take the fuse outside of the doorway, and right before you drop, you're going to want to drop the fuse, and 2 people are going to pick them up and bring them down into the elevator shaft in order to put them in. So, something very important for your team comp is that you are going to want to put the units that can deal with blast shinkas on the inside. So there will be 2 portals, the same as it is in the normal difficulty. And each portal, you're going to want to send in either a Gwyn with Octant Riot, or sword units with Partridge Sky, or Ikoras or Wolves, depending on who you have brought. On the outside, you're going to want to have units who can break rapid fire shields, and are also really good at dealing with majors, mini-bosses, and add clear. This is where Ningfei and Stella would be, and you would want to have one on each side. To start out, you're going to be dealing with some waves of ads, and then a Shinka servitor will spawn after the people on the inside have broken their own servitors and start doing their callouts. You're going to want to defeat these Shinka servitors as fast as you can, because that way you can then start entering your own symbols. However, for the 2 people on the inside, I can give you a perspective here. What you're going to do when you get inside is you're going to defeat this garrison servitor as fast as you can, and then you'll be able to start reading the symbols for your teammates. And again, this will be in a sequence, so it'll be very, very important for you to get it right. This will be important for both people on the inside to coordinate, because both of you will only see 2 symbols in the sequence. On the blue side and the red side, it will again be 1 inner symbol and 1 outer symbol. And also there will be no repeats. So you will never hear diamond be said twice, you will never hear eyeball be said twice. If there is a repeat symbol, that means somebody made an incorrect callout. To start out, the easiest way to do this would be to just call it out and be watching the screen as the symbols go in. So here I would say eyeball. And then the next symbol would come out, and this is not my symbol, so we would be listening for the other side to call out their symbol. So let's say in this instance it is square. All right. And then the third symbol would obviously be also the other side. And let's say it would be clover. And then finally, I would make the last one, and it is diamond. So the sequence would be eyeball, square, clover, diamond. And then the people on the outside need to input the sequence using the screens available. Now there will be 8 screens, but obviously only 4 of the symbols will be correct. So you will be looking for each and every one of the symbols. So something that will be very important for you to do is to clear all the enemies that are around so that you are safe, and then get into position for the sequence. Now, again, it is the most important thing is that you're able to do this safely and consistently, because that is your goal. Your goal is to clear. Your goal isn't to speedrun, unless your goal is to speedrun, and then obviously, like, you would be doing it fast anyway, and you wouldn't be listening to me. But for the people who just want to clear, you can take your time with it, so long as you have around a minute left before you finish the sequence. So in that case, every single person on the outside would get to one of the symbols that was called out and wait for everybody to be ready. And once everybody is ready, the first person in the sequence would press their button, and when it's completed, you would see entrance to the sequence has been completed. Then the second person would then press their button, entering their portion of the sequence, the third person, so on and so forth until the full sequence has been put in. And trust me, you do want to be getting this right. Messing up on this part will be a very demoralizing factor. Now, once you are all teleported in, you will be met with the inside room as before. And what you will want to do is you're going to want to burst down one of the Scorch Vandals that spawns. And these guys have a lot of health, so it'll be important to focus all of your efforts onto the same one so that you can defeat them as quickly as possible. Because if you do not defeat them and break all of the fuses before the timer runs out, you will wipe. But once the Scorch Vandal is defeated, it'll drop a Scorch Cannon with 4 shots, and you will then break all 4 of the fuses. If you miss your Scorch Cannon shot, you will have to defeat the other Vandal, so it is important that you take your time with it again, so long as you are not about to wipe. And once both people and both sides have broken all their fuses, you will be given much more time to continue with the encounter. And you will have then be given a fuse, and you will have to use the fuse to break the lightning shields through the doorways in order to allow everybody to move through. But the fuse will be putting you on a timer as before, so you will have to be swapping between your teammates in order to keep moving forward. So everybody should be ready to carry the fuse if you do not have any stacks of shock. If you have any stacks of shock whatsoever, somebody else should be taking care of the fuse. Otherwise, you are going to run into some issues. And again, if the fuse is on the ground for too long, you will wipe. So you need to have somebody carrying the fuse at all times. There are a couple seconds of leeway that are given to you, but you do not want to waste those couple of seconds and wipe the entire encounter. So after going through all of the rooms and defeating the enemies and overseers that spawn and try to stop your progress, you will be met with the Blast Shinka. And this is why it's very important that you put the allies with the Blast Shinka stunning capabilities into the rooms, because that way you guarantee it so that the Blast Shinkas can be stunned on both sides very easily. So you would then stun the Blast Shinka, and your entire team will then wail on it, defeating it as quickly as possible. And then as soon as the Blast Shinka is defeated, 2 more Scorch Vandals will spawn, same as when you're in the room before. You will defeat the Scorch Vandal, only one of them, and it'll give you a Scorch Cannon, and then you can shoot the fuses and progress through with the encounter. And this is very important. You will want to swap the fuse before going through the gate. Okay, you do not want to mess up this part. It is going to be the safest option to always swap the fuse before walking through the gate. And this goes for every single gate that you pass through. Because the last thing that you want to do is to have somebody take too long, and because you were at like 5 seconds on the fuse before entering the doorway, then lose out on all of your time on the fuse, and your entire team now can no longer progress because either one of you died or the fuse is stuck in the doorway. Any number of reasons that can cause you to mess up. And then you will teleport into the main room, and as always, you'll dunk the fuse into the elevator. And with all of those done, you'll be done with the first phase of the encounter. Now, when it comes to the second phase of the encounter, it's going to be the exact same as the first phase, except for the fact that in the transition period between the first phase and the second phase of the encounter, after you've entered the fuses, and before you deal with the servitors and go into the room, 2 heavy shanks are going to spawn, and these are big, beefy boys with void shields. So you are going to want to break the heavy shanks' shields before you go into the rooms, and then your teammates will deal with the heavy shanks and adds as usual. And there will also be overseers spawning in the outside room during this second phase. As soon as you start hearing the code being given out, and after you've defeated the rapid fire Shinkas, you are going to want to look out for 2 overseers on both sides. Both red and blue side will have them. Defeating them will be the top priority, as they can disable and defeat your team very handedly. But if you are able to manage to clear all of them and get through both of those phases, you will be completed with the most difficult encounter in this raid. Now, as it comes to the final encounter, this will be Isakis' Tabernacle, and it's going to be very similar to how Isakis was before, with a couple of key differences. Key difference number 1 is that you are going to be managing a buff and debuff. So, you on both sides where the piercing Shinkas will spawn, there will be an ether ball looking thing, and interacting with it will give you the ether infused buff, or the ether enrichment. It will give you the ether osmosis buff, and that buff will allow you to shoot immune overseers, and once the buff is through, you will then get oversaturation, and oversaturation will disallow you from picking up any scorch cannons, and it will disallow you from picking up the buff again until it runs out. Additionally, if you have the ether osmosis buff, you will not be able to pick up scorch cannons either, and picking up a scorch cannon and shooting it will also give you oversaturation. You will want to make sure that you are cycling through your teammates in order to manage the oversaturation debuff and clear the encounter. The first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to defeat the piercing Shinkas as fast as you possibly can. And this is why you want to bring Tantus, Umekos, and even Atals if you don't have Tantus and Umekos, so that you can break these piercing Shinkas, and the Tantus and Umekos will also be major in helping your team with the DPS phases. So it's going to be very much the same as the normal mode, where you're going to want to stay as a team and rotate from left side to right side, dealing with the piercing Shinkas and all of the enemies that spawn. Bursting them down in a timely manner will be beneficial towards your team. However, you can still take some time. It's not a rush, and you don't have to spend all of your ammo and resources in order to take out the Shinkas, at least until Isakis jumps and starts the next phase. So, something very important to note is that when the next phase starts, Isakis will be a lot more aggressive. He will slam it 3 times in quick succession, and these will be tall waves. They will start out as tall waves, and you will have to time your jumps, otherwise you will be taking a lot of damage, which you do not want to take. Additionally, when the Scorched Vandals spawn, the Overseers will also spawn. Somebody must be ready to pick up the Ether Osmosis buff and shoot the Overseers. In that case, you can see me doing it right there with the Ether Osmosis buff and shooting the Overseers so that my teammates can help clear. And the same as it is on normal difficulty, you have to burst down the Scorched Vandals as fast as you can in order to take the Scorched Cannons and break both of the fuses. And you will be doing this on the right side first, you'll be doing this on the left side first, and then you'll be moving over onto the right side to do it all over again. And once this completes, you'll be moving on to the next phase. And this is basically the exact same as normal difficulty, except for there will also be Overseers spawning again. You're going to want to have somebody on the outside in the Isakis' room who will be ready to shoot the Overseers and make sure that their team are protected. And you only need one person with the debuff in order to shoot the Overseers, because you will need to cycle the buff around in order to deal with the next wave of Overseers, because there will be 2 waves of Overseers in the Isakis room. But starting out, you will be clearing out some enemies real quickly, and you'll be defeating impact Shinkas in order to spawn the portals so that your teammates can go inside and do the reading callouts for you. Now, this is important to mention. You do not want to be standing on the plate when the impact Shinka dies unless you are planning on going in immediately. This can be very, very pivotal for the people like the impact units, especially if you only have one impact unit, because if you're taken in before the second impact Shinka is stunned, your other teammates are going to have a really bad time. But before anybody goes into the room, you will want to pick up the Ether Osmosis buff, because there will be Overseers spawned immediately, and if you do not defeat them as soon as you get in and you lose the buff, then you are going to have an extremely difficult time in that room. But as usual, the people inside are going to be defeating the servitor, and they're going to be reading mechanics. And I can showcase that right here. As you can see, this is what I would be doing. I pick up the buff and then I run in to prepare for the reading, and I pull out my summons. I debuff the enemies, I clear them out, I defeat the Overseers, and I then get to work on the Servitor. And once the Servitor is defeated and both readers are in, you will be able to make a call out. Alright, and you can see the teammates call out appears on the top right, and by pressing the ping button, and you'll have a prompt on the screen as well, you'll open up a wheel to then make a call out, and again, just like normal mode, look at the picture and not the text, because the text is from the boss's perspective and it will confuse people. On the outside, your teammates will then shoot the weak spots while also managing and clearing all the ads that they can, and as soon as both of the weak spots are defeated, you will be teleported out and you'll be starting the 20-second damage phase. You have a couple of seconds to start and get set up so you can put out your summons just a little bit early and put out your wells as soon as the damage phase starts, and then you can immediately get to work. And obviously, if you have enough damage, you will be able to one-phase the boss, which will be the best option for you. However, if you do not have enough damage, you will have to repeat the same mechanics as before, which can be a little bit difficult, especially if you lost a lot of reses in the first phase. If you are successful, you will be able to defeat Isakis in enough time, no matter your team comp, so long as you are able to deal enough damage within the phases. And with that in mind, those are all of the important details in order to defeat all of the encounters of the Monolith Fall on Eclipse difficulty. And these should be the best tips for your team comps, no matter what level investment that you are in. There are always other options that you can pick, even when it comes to mythic weapons. But of course, every single concession that you make, whether it's a concession on a character or a concession on a weapon, will make it a bit more difficult for you. However, it is still possible to do it with all free-to-play units. I did mention the Atal team, like a full team of 6 Atals who was able to clear Isakis on the contest difficulty. So if they can do it, so can you. Not that I recommend it. I always recommend that you take the best and easiest options, because obviously your goal is to get in there, get your clears, get your loots, and get out. And I hope you have a great time doing it. If you need any help with your artifacts for the different units, I do have artifact recommendations for most of the units that I mentioned in this video. I am missing some for a few of the 4-star units, but I will be updating the spreadsheet on a regular basis. And also, if you are interested in more guides and news and coverage of Destiny Rising in the future, then be sure to subscribe to my channel, as that will be the best way for you to keep up to date on all things regarding Destiny Rising. Additionally, if you are looking for teammates to clear the raid with, I definitely recommend joining either the official Destiny Rising server or my own Discord server, which my Discord server is linked in the description down below. So hopefully you are able to find a good team to run it with. Beyond that, if you feel like there is anything that I missed or is worth mentioning, be sure to leave a comment. If there is something that you didn't necessarily realize, like when it came to certain exotic weapon choices, I would like to hear it if any of these tips gave you a lot more help in clearing your raids. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I will see you all next time.